Every year, billions of people around the world stop to remember one event, one death, one moment that changed everything. The crucifixion of Jesus Christ. But if you grew up in Morocco like I did, you were taught a different story. We were told that it didn't really happen, that it was an illusion, a substitute, a mistake. Someone else took the place of Jesus, and everyone thought that it was him. For years, I accepted that. I didn't question it. It was just what we were taught. Then I started digging, not into Christian propaganda, but into history, into the earliest sources, into what even non Christian writers said about that day. And what I found shocked me because the Islamic narrative, the one that says Jesus wasn't crucified, actually provides the biggest clues that the crucifixion was a historical reality. The more you look at why the substitution theory exists, the more you realize the event was so public, so documented, so undeniable that it had to be explained away. Today, we aren't just comparing religions, we're looking at evidence, evidence that was hidden in plain sight. This is why the cross is the one event in history that even the Quran can't ignore. Let's get into it. When we go to Surah 4, verse 157, which tells us, "And for boasting, we killed the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, the messenger of Allah. But they neither killed nor crucified him. It was only made to appear so." Even those who argue for this crucifixion are in doubt. They have no knowledge whatsoever, only making assumptions. They certainly did not kill him. That's the foundation of the entire Islamic narrative. No crucifixion, just an appearance. But here's the thing that kept me up at night. If thousands of people saw it, if Roman centurions, who were professional executioners, carried it out and recorded it, if Jesus' own mother stood at the foot of that cross and wept, why would an illusion be necessary? Think about the historical context. The Roman Empire was not in the business of illusion. Crucifixion was a public spectacle. It was meant to be seen, to be feared, to be remembered. You didn't fake a crucifixion, you did it, and everyone watched. And historians, secular historians, not Christian apologists, agree on this. The crucifixion of Jesus is the most certain fact of ancient history. We have more evidence for it than most of the events from that time period. Non Christian writers like Tacitus, who was a Roman historian, confirmed it himself as he wrote that Jesus was executed by Pontius Pilate. Josephus, a Jewish historian, mentioned it. Even early critics of Christianity, like Celsus, didn't deny the crucifixion. They rather argued about what it meant, not whether it happened. So, if every contemporary source, friend and enemy alike, says it happened, what are we supposed to do with "it appeared so to them"? One scholar put it this way: if the crucifixion was an illusion, it was the most successful deception in human history. Thousands of witnesses, Roman records, eyewitness testimonies, all fooled. Now, let's talk about the substitution theory itself. Early Muslim scholars couldn't agree on who was on that cross. Some said it was Judas, who betrayed Jesus. Others said that it was a volunteer. Some said that it was a Roman soldier. And few even suggested that Jesus was transformed into someone else at the last moment so that the person would take his spot and get crucified instead. This confusion among commentators is actually a massive historical problem because if the event was so clear that the Quran had to correct it, why couldn't the scholars agree on the details? Why are there so many different theories about the substitute? And the answer is simple: because the witnesses were convinced it was him. The early Muslims were trying to reconcile a verse from their own book with an undeniable historical reality, and they couldn't agree on how to do it. But here is the most important point that I want you to sit with. If God replaced Jesus with an innocent man to save him, wouldn't that make God the author of the very confusion the verse mentions? Think about it. The verse said that they had no certain knowledge, they only followed assumptions. But if God Himself caused the confusion by making someone else look like Jesus, then the confusion isn't a human error, it's a divine deception. And that raises some really uncomfortable questions. Why would God deceive thousands of people, and not only thousands of people, but also the tens of millions of people who were Christians before Islam was even created? Why would he let Jesus' own mother weep at the wrong grave? Why would he let the disciples spend the rest of their lives preaching a resurrection that didn't happen and ultimately die for a lie? Modern thinkers, including some Muslim scholars, are starting to realize that the crucifixion was so undeniable, so well attested, that even the skeptics had to create a substitution theory just to explain why a prophet could be seen to fail on a cross. Because a prophet dying on a cross looks like failure, it looks like defeat, it looks like God abandoned him. But what if it wasn't failure? What if it was the opposite? That's where the earliest Christians and the earliest Arab Christians went next. Because when we look at the earliest Arabic Christian writings, centuries before the modern era, we see something fascinating. North African Christians, including Amazigh Christians in what is now Morocco, didn't see a contradiction between their culture and the cross. They embraced it. They saw the cross as the ultimate sign of God's power. And here's why. They argued that the victory wasn't in escaping death, it was in conquering it. Any prophet can die of old age, any teacher can pass away peacefully, but to die the most humiliating, painful death imaginable, and then to rise from the dead, that's not failure, that's power. The earliest Christian writings, like the writings of the church fathers in North Africa, talk about this constantly. They say if Jesus had avoided the cross, we would have no proof. But because he went through it and came out the other side, we now have everything. Now, here's where this connects to today. Gen Z Moroccans are starting to ask hard questions. They're online, they're reading, they're watching debates, and many of them are saying, if my identity is built on a 7th century interpretation that denies a 1st century fact, where does that leave me? They want the Jesus of history, not the Jesus of the narrative that they were given, not the Jesus who was saved from the cross as they were taught, the Jesus who actually lived, the Jesus who actually died and actually changed the world. And when they look at the evidence, the Roman records, the early manuscripts, the testimonies of the disciples, the transformation of the apostles, they're finding that the cross is not a weakness of Christianity, but rather that it is its strongest piece of evidence. So let me leave you with this. The crucifixion isn't a Western invention. It's not a colonial import. It's a historical anchor. An event so public, so documented, so undeniable that even those who denied it had to create elaborate theories to explain it away, to try and fool others. The substitution theory exists because the crucifixion was real. If it wasn't real, you wouldn't need to explain it. You could just ignore it. But you can't ignore the cross. You can't ignore the empty tomb. And you most certainly cannot ignore the fact that the earliest followers of Jesus, the people who were there, who saw it with their own eyes, went to their death, proclaiming that he rose. For me, as an ex Muslim Moroccan, this was one of the hardest things to face because admitting the crucifixion was real meant admitting that everything I was taught about Jesus might be wrong. But I had to follow the evidence, and the evidence led me to the cross. And at the cross, I found something I wasn't looking for. Not a defeated prophet, not a failed Messiah, but a God who loved me enough to die for me. And that's the truth that history can erase.